Welcome to this episode of the Lake Doctor podcast. I'm Suzie Light.
And I'm Dr. Nate Bosch.
My favorite lake nerd. What are we talking about today?
Yes, so I'm so excited. We have one of my former students, TJ Faur. He is the environmental quality technician at the Fort Wayne Zoo. We're going to talk about one of the conservation projects that they're working on there and also talk about how data is so important for making decisions.
So his project might be a little hellish with a little ravioli on the side. Stay tuned. The doctor is in. TJ, welcome to the Lake Doctor podcast. I am so excited to be able to talk to you today because you happen to work at my favorite zoo. So first of all, tell us about you, tell us about your journey to Grace College, and then to the zoo.
Yes, absolutely. First, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back here in the Lilly Center and being able to talk with you guys. Yeah, so I grew up in Auburn, Indiana. I went to school with Ryan Workman. He was a few years older than me.
Another guest on the podcast.
Yes. Yep. So Northern Indiana, been around Northern Indiana all my life. And I traveled to Michigan, Coldwater Lake in Michigan. And that's kind of where the love for the outside, the environment was started. My grandma has a cottage up there. And so being able to just be out on the water started my love. And so I've always kind of known that I've wanted to do something environmental. When I was younger, I thought I wanted to work with animals. I've kind of grown out of that, and now more, I enjoy like the ecosystem as a whole. And so in high school, I was able to have some great experiences just at the zoo as a volunteer, and then at the Shed Aquarium as an intern. And from there, I was deciding where to go to school, and I was between Purdue, going through their forestry program, and Grace College. So my sister came to Grace in education, so I was very familiar with the campus and the people, and I loved visiting her. But I thought forestry and Purdue was more where I wanted to go. And then as I prayed about it, as I visited Purdue, I just kept leaning more and more towards Grace, and then had a few conversations with Dr. Bosch, and then eventually applied and came here.
And we're so glad you did.
We are so glad
Yes,
you did. And when you
too.
were here, you were part of the aquarium project, yes?
Yes, I was on the aquarium team for the Lilly Center for 3.5 years.
And did you visit area schools or businesses?
Yep. So part of my role as the aquarium team is we went out and maintained those fish tanks that are out in schools, libraries, and any businesses that are part of the program.
So water was an important part of your journey, and it still is. Tell us about your job at the zoo now.
Yes, my title is the environmental quality technician, but my focus is water quality. So my day-to-day involves a lot of water chemistry. All of the water at the zoo comes to us at some point or another, and we maintain it to make sure it's clean, healthy, safe for the animals.
That's sounding similar to the mission of the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams.
Well, in so many ways, Nate. So it looks like you're collecting a lot of data. Do you collect data over time, and what does that tell you?
Yeah, so we monitor data. It's all into our ZIMS database. And then
ZIMS?
ZIMS, yep, that's the database.
Zoo Information Management System.
I'm pretty sure.
Did
Okay.
you? Wow, that's
Yeah.
great acronym translation, Suzie.
Yeah, if I were to guess, that's probably right. So we can collect all of our data in there and then go back historically. And then all of our keeper notes are also in there, so we can kind of see and correlate. Well, we have a spike in a specific parameter every Tuesday, and then we can look at the keeper notes, what happens every Tuesday, and then correlate that. And then we also, Dr. Jean, my predecessor and current counterpart, she created what we call environmental audits. So our goal is once a year, we will take an enclosure and then take all of the data we have for it, put it into an audit, and then it will see how often are we meeting our ideal ranges in that enclosure. And then so this was very beneficial because we might the keepers might notice the temperature was low here and there, but we didn't really know how often is it low and is it an actual problem. So then this tells us, yes, temperature was low 80% of the time or 20% of the time. So that kind of points out where we can improve all of our enclosures. So to get specific, we have our Stingray Bay exhibit. It's a touch tank currently housing southern stingrays, cow-nosed stingrays, and flagtail fish.
I love that exhibit. It's so much fun to, even as a 46-year-old, putting my hand in the water and feeling the stingrays swim by is really cool.
Yeah, so we have been collecting data for that exhibit for a while. We did an environmental audit in 2024, so before I arrived at the zoo, and that told us our oxygen was low, our nitrates were consistently high, and our phosphates were consistently high. So after taking that audit, we made a few changes. We adjusted some of our backwash protocols and timing and how often. And then we also wanted to adjust our low oxygen. And it wasn't super low, but it was out of that ideal range more often than we would like. So then Dr. Jean theorized that there was a blanket of CO2 collecting over the water. So she had her little CO2 monitor where it was normal outside, she walked into the building, was normal inside the building, and then did it right above the water, and she saw an increase in CO2 right above the water. So she theorized that gas exchange could not happen, and so oxygen could not get into the water, resulting in low oxygen.
It's too many kids heavy breathing.
Yes. So the change that she recommended was a simple fan installed. It's still there up at the top right of the exhibit, and that blows the CO2 off. And once that was installed, we saw an instant rise in oxygen levels.
That's so cool. When I saw that fan there recently, I just sort of thought, oh, that's just to kind of keep the water cooler or something like that. But it's to blow off that excess CO2.
Yep.
Wow.
So then we can look at our 2024 environmental audit and our 2025 environmental audit, and there's a drastic difference. The audit gives a score out of 5 on how well we are doing. So the 2024 audit was around a 2.7 maybe, and the 2025 was up to a 4.2. Somewhere in that range.
Well, and that sounds just like what we do at the Lilly Center. We put out an annual report called Beneath the Surface, specifically to 16 different lakes that we sample weekly during the summer months. And we do an audit. We look at how is it this year compared to last year? How many times is it over certain parameters? And I love then how that audit leads to action. We have the same intention here at the Lilly Center, where this data we've collected is leading to action through our Lake RX program, where we can fix some of the problems that the data shows. And then I love that then you can go back and see it was here and now it's here, and you can actually confirm that the action that you took then actually made that system better in the future. And we would expect continual monitoring as part of Lake RX as well. That's really cool.
Yes, we're very thankful to have Dr. Jean on the team. She is very smart.
That's good to have smart people around.
Yep.
So our mission at the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams is that our lakes and streams will be clean, healthy, safe, and beautiful. And so very fun to see the comparisons there. You're looking at that from a zoo standpoint, so that your animals there at the zoo can be healthy and flourish and people can learn about them. And we're doing that in our natural ecosystems here in northern Indiana as well.
But you're also growing students to go out into the world in different kinds of environmental sciences.
Yes.
And that is huge. So Thanks, TJ, for being one of those strong advocates for environmental sciences.
And I'll have to say that I've gotten to visit TJ now twice at the Fort Wayne Zoo in his role there, and I just couldn't be more proud of him. It's so much fun to have him take myself and some of our other staff members around the Lilly Center and show us all of the different aquatic environments that he has responsibility over, and him talking about, well, we had to troubleshoot this, and we're promoting this, and we're going to be changing this, and we do a great job here with this. And it was kind of a proud several moments there going around with him, and he's doing such a great job, even young in his career there. And Fort Wayne Zoo, you said it earlier, Suzie, is really a top-notch zoo, and we're so fortunate to have it here in northern Indiana. My family and I just went there just a few weeks ago and spent the day and had just a wonderful time.
Well, I've been going to that zoo for over 50 years, and it's neat to see the changes that have been happening.
Yep.
And I imagine you are driving some of those. So one of the props that we have on the table is something that you're very familiar with. It kind of looks muddy. It kind of looks maybe like a leftover of the dinosaur era. But tell us about those unique animals.
Yes. So in front of us, we have a Hellbender, an Eastern Hellbender, and a mud puppy.
Oh, they're models. They're not the real things,
Right.
guys.
Yes.
They do look pretty lifelike, though.
Yeah. Like, if you love those, you've got a unique taste.
Yes. So a big part of the zoo's mission is conservation, and our current conservation project is the Eastern Hellbender. So we are working with Purdue and as a part of their research project, and it's called a Head Start program. So we go and collect eggs from the wilds. We grow them up, hatch them, give them a few years to get big and strong, and then re-release them into the water and to the habitats that they were taken from.
Where do you have to collect eggs from?
They have to be taken from where there's existing populations, and that is pretty much only where there's good water quality in rivers. So there's a spot in Ohio, and then the Blue River down in southern Indiana.
And so we would call these bioindicator species, right?
Yes.
Because they're very susceptible to different environmental problems.
Yep.
And so where they still are surviving is an indicator that the quality there is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But as we continue to do conservation across the landscape in the Midwestern United States, we're moving some of those degraded streams towards being better quality again. And so now they're able to support these Hellbenders, whereas once they weren't able to because of some of the degradation. And so it's a success story that we can then put them back, because they're not able to get there themselves, to those areas that have gotten better again. And so you guys kind of help them out with your partners at Purdue. That's really cool.
Yes.
It is cool, and it's. I imagine you've got this big team that helps you do this, but people like me who go to the zoo and we see the animal exhibits, we don't necessarily understand the conservation role that you're playing. So if you can delve into that a little bit more and tell us about the team that you have that goes to do these things.
Yeah, so we are all a part of the veterinary staff. So while I'm not medical, I'm technically under the vet staff. There's two of us in environmental quality. It's me and Dr. Jean Elick. And then in our conservation side, we have Dave Mesman is our conservation specialist. And so Dave does all the hard work, hard labor to help maintain these Hellbender exhibits. And we help them out where we can. We're water quality, and water quality is very important to Hellbender, so we work very closely together.
Yeah, and I've been able to meet those colleagues of TJ's there at the zoo, and it's really fun. We, on the podcast here, use the word nerd affectionately,
Well,
right?
you're a lake nerd,
And
yes,
these
that's an
are,
affectionate.
These were definitely nerdy people that we got to meet over there at the zoo, and I just remember particularly with Dave, just his passion for these critters, these Hellbenders, was just so apparent, and he just wanted to keep talking and talking about them, and as you alluded to, Suzie, you look at them and they're maybe not particularly attractive animals, but his passion for them and helping them get out there in the environment. And TJ, you're more on the role of looking at the water that they're in, and how do you keep the water clean for these guys as you're growing them up, getting ready to put them out in the natural environment?
Yeah, we have cycled enclosures, so we are monitoring the nitrogen cycle. That's the most important part of that side of the job. And then, so I work with Dave. We have a strict range protocol where for every exhibit at the zoo where we monitor water quality, every parameter that we test has an ideal range, and then an acceptable range, and then an action range. And then when a parameter gets into the action range, we have steps to take, so what the keepers can do to get it back into ideal. And then we have our emergency ranges, which just have more aggressive steps.
Oh, that's
So
really
keeping nitrogen out of water is important, and having healthy water, like they're an indicator, like the canary in the coal mine, right? They're an indicator that the water is healthy. In our area in Kosciuszko County, we don't have hellbenders,
right.
but we do have other species that are also indicative of good water quality.
Yeah, and we have that on the table in front of us as well. That's the mud puppy, related to the hellbender. These are both salamanders that are aquatic, meaning that they live their life under the water, as opposed to some terrestrial salamanders. And the mud puppy, not quite as large as the hellbender. Mud puppies are here in northern Indiana, whereas the hellbenders would just be in southern Indiana. And we have Mabel, the mud puppy, that lives here at the Lilly Center in one of our aquariums, and you cared for her as a student here, and she's doing well. I think actually she might be getting a little less shy as she grows up here at the Lilly Center. I see her out and about a little bit more, and able to sort of be seen by thousands of K-12 kids that come through the building here on an annual basis. And so difference when we look at them, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, TJ, but a big difference I see, one is the size, although the mud puppy that we have here on our table is a little smaller than what Mabel is, or what the total size would be of a mud puppy. But you also you can notice a little bit different coloration. Mabel's a little bit smoother, doesn't have all of the wrinkles that the hellbender would have. But also the mud puppy has these gills that are external to the body, kind of these frilly appendages coming just below the base of the head. And that's a very specific, unique part of the mud puppy. And those gills, that's where the mud puppy is pulling in oxygen out of the water, just like a fish would have gills to pull oxygen out of the water and be able to breathe underwater. So too, the mud puppies do that, but it's just that the gills are outside. So the hellbender then must have gills internal to its body somehow?
Yep. Hellbenders have no external gills. And if you can see the side of the mud puppy has these flaps, almost looks like ravioli.
Yeah.
So that's to increase its surface area.
So TJ's holding up the hellbender right now. For those of you who are listening, this might be a good plug to say maybe you want to watch this on YouTube instead of just listening. So, okay, continue on.
Yep. So the ravioli flaps. That is not a actual term.
Scientific term.
Yep.
Ravioli flaps.
They increase the surface area for the skin of the hellbender to help be able to take up more oxygen. So they have no external gills, which means they have to take up oxygen through their skin, and that is the purpose of these flaps.
Wow. And
Or
also
frills. Are they frills?
Flaps.
Okay.
ravioli, frills, or flaps.
Excess skin.
I also remember when we were there at the zoo, Dave was telling us that it's really important for them to have high oxygen concentration in the water, high dissolved oxygen in the water. And could that be in part because they've got to absorb it through their skin? And if there's not a lot of oxygen around them in the environment, they're going to have a tough time getting enough oxygen to survive, since it has to come across their skin. So while they have the adaptation or the design feature of having these ravioli. I can't say it with a straight face, but having these ravioli frills or flaps gives them more surface area that still they need to have a lot of oxygen, which is one of those water quality features that has been degraded in a lot of our lakes and streams across Indiana and throughout the Midwest. So that makes them little less able to survive in some locations.
Yes. This year we are blessed. So the entire project, Hellbender project, which includes Indianapolis, Louisville, Metzger Park Zoo, and a few others. Every Hellbender being released is coming from Fort Wayne Zoo. So we have over 200 Hellbenders being released in Southern Indiana this year.
How old are they?
3 to 4 years is the average
And so
from
a
ours.
3 to 4 year old Hellbender is going to be about 5 inches long, 6 inches.
Probably up to 7, 8.
Okay, so not quite as big as
not
the one
quite
we
as
have
big
at
as
the
this
table.
one.
Maybe closer to the mud puppy size that we have on our table.
Yep, maybe
here.
a little bit bigger than the mud puppy.
Okay.
And then what's the lifespan of a Hellbender?
That is a great question, and I don't have a great answer for you.
That's always good in science if you don't know the answer to
Because
say you're
it gives
not
you
sure.
more opportunity to do
Some learning, right?
research, right?
Yeah, more research, yeah.
Speaking of research, when you were here at Grace College, you were part of a team that was doing some data collection. What was your favorite lab with Dr. Bosch?
My favorite lab has to be the bog. Going out and attempting to get data of the water beneath the bog. Just all the troubleshooting and all the different methods we tried while we were out there was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So we had Jason Kissel here on the podcast during season 2, and he leads Acres Land Trust, and Acres Land Trust was the owner of this particular bog that we went to, and just a wonderful time. And I've been there year after year with my students, and the way the bog works is you have this sphagnum peat mat on the top, and then you've got water underneath it. And we've wanted to sample what that water is like under the moss mat that we're all standing on. And as we walk, it's kind of like, moving up and down. You can sort of feel the waves in the water. So we know the water's under there, but we can't get any of our scientific instruments down into the water. And so Suzie and I have a picture of TJ in front of us right here on the table of him holding up this really muddy PVC pipe, because we had this idea in
That's
TJ's.
what that is.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first year we just sort of tried to push the mat aside with our hands, and then the instruments just kept getting caught in that moss. The next year, we had a student that was kind of putting their feet in there to try to press it apart and try to get instruments, and that wasn't working. We had someone actually in a hole in the mat kind of thrashing around as they're holding themselves up. That didn't work. TJ's year, yes, we had this PVC pipe, and we're like, oh, well, if we get the PVC pipe through the mat, we can put the instrument through the middle of the PVC pipe. Didn't work.
We did not
right.
get it. Nope.
It's so how close did we get that year?
I thought it would be pretty close. We got the PVC pipe all the way down, and then the probe went through the PVC pipe. What we thought was down into the water, but we just couldn't get readings out of it.
Yeah. So I think it was the year after TJ's. Then we got a smaller PVC pipe to go inside the bigger PVC pipe to try to push all of the debris out of the larger PVC pipe. And debris just kept coming into it, and so it remains an ongoing sort of mystery to see what that water is like under the mat of that bog.
You had an interesting journey to get here. What would you say to students that are thinking about their educational journey and their interest maybe in the environment?
Yeah. Start early and get involved. I believe I was talking with my dad early high school, talking about my desire to be environmental something. Had no idea where I wanted to go at that point. And he just gave me the advice of look online, try and find opportunities. And so from that, I became a volunteer at the Fort Wayne Zoo, was part of their Teens for Nature program for 3 years. And then I also found the research project for the Shed Aquarium, so the high school lake ecology. We did a research project up in the Apostle Islands, and so did that for a summer, and that was really fun. And then working here at the Lilly Center was part of the aquarium team, and then Dr. Bosch also helped get me to connected with the DNR and working with the fisheries biologist of Northern Indiana, and I spent a summer with them just out on the water. I'm learning more about our lakes and how to manage them. So pretty much start early and get involved.
Yeah, I think it's so important for youngsters, if they're thinking about moving in this direction, is to get some of those early experiences, because you can think theoretically of what it's like to work in an environmental career, and you may be way wrong. And so you might try it and realize it's not like what you had thought it would be. You may try it and confirm even more, like in TJ's case, that this is what you love and this is what you want to do. I tell my students all the time that my goal for you is that you have a career where you are excited to get up for work each day, to go and have an impact. And so it can be really rewarding. But I would totally agree with TJ that start early, confirm those directions, see if that's something that you really want to go into. And I think whether we're talking about labs in college classes or we're talking about those earlier experiences, what I think those experiences do is it helps inspire. Because sometimes things can be hard in environmental careers. We've got challenges that are hard to overcome, and we need that inspiration, that sort of love, that passion that got us into this field. We need to have that continue to fuel us, and then also those experiences, I think, help prepare for that future career. I'm sure you have this. I know I have this in my own life, where you're working on a new project or you've got something and you sort of look back in the rearview mirror of your life and it's like, oh, I had this experience or I learned this back there, and that's actually helping me right now, which I think is God's providence and him kind of helping prepare so there's not wasted steps. But regardless of how you would look at that, it's interesting that we can see these pieces, these building blocks to get us to who we are today, and then we have those experiences that we can rely on for what we're currently facing.
You know, we talk a lot here on the podcast about stewardship and stewardship of the environment, stewardship of the water. What you're talking about, Nate, is stewardship of your own life direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's a new application to that stewardship idea. Yeah.
So TJ, tell us about how data collection helps you. We know that it helps the Lilly Center. How does it help you in your work?
Absolutely. So almost everything we do over in the lab is data driven. We get asked questions a lot by the vet staff or our keepers or our management staff, pretty much about everything. And we want to be able to support our recommendations or be able to help them. And all of that comes from the data we collect. So we talked about our range protocols a little bit. So for every parameter, we have our ranges. And then
what are some of those parameters that you guys are testing for?
Yeah. So for the sake of simplicity, we have two different types of exhibits that we test for. We have our cycled exhibits, which would be our nitrogen cycle, including our hellbenders and all of our fish. And then we also have our chlorinated exhibits, which would be more of our marine mammals. So our pinnipeds, our otters, sea lions, and penguins are some of our marine mammals. And then for our chlorinated exhibits, we test chlorine to make sure we're not over-chlorinating, but we also test coliform to make sure we are disinfecting enough so the water is safe for the animals. And then for our cycled exhibits, we monitor the nitrogen cycle, so most importantly, ammonia, making sure that our biofiltration is keeping up processing that ammonia, processing it into nitrites and then into nitrates. And then we can, depending on our amount of nitrates, will tell us how often we need water changes and backwashing our filters. And so those are just a few. And
those, the nitrogen cycling is something that you worked on a lot when you were here at the Lilly Center as well, with our aquariums, because we have that same sort of nitrogen cycle at work in I think we've got around 90 aquariums.
Yep.
And so that's a lot of nitrogen cycles to keep track of. And so you were well prepared then moving into the zoo environment to be able to look after those cycles. So can you speed that cycle up or slow it down? Or you just have to make sure that it's continually cycling to keep the animals safe? Like what are sort of you had talked about ranges and you can get involved. What are sort of the ways that you get the data and then you do something with the data as a result? Like what are some levers or knobs you can change to actually make something better in the exhibit based on the data you get?
Yeah. So for the nitrogen cycle specifically, we want to make sure our biofiltration is running properly. And if we're noticing that it's not keeping up, so we're seeing residual ammonia or the nitrites aren't processing fast enough, then we can make changes by adding more surface area, so more bioballs or increased biofiltration, just the size. And then we can also add more aeration, since that process of converting ammonia to nitrites and nitrites to nitrates requires oxygen and alkalinity. So we can make sure both of those parameters are up enough that it is not impeding the process of transforming those.
Let's dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
So you mentioned bio balls. So those are those rubber, spiky little balls that maybe some aquarium hobbyists would recognize. And those are all about having lots of surface area that bacteria can colonize. And those bacteria are the ones that are making that transition possible, right?
Yep.
From the ammonia to the nitrite to the nitrate.
Yep.
And then you also said oxygen. So little chemistry lesson for you here, Suzie,
thank
on
you.
the set would be, so ammonia would be NH3. So notice there's no oxygen in the chemical formula, just nitrogen and hydrogen. And then we go to NO2, which is nitrite with an I, has 2 oxygens. And then we go to nitrate, NO3 has 3 oxygens. So notice what TJ was saying, you add
adds
oxygen.
more oxygen.
Yeah, and then those other nitrogen parameters are less harmful than to those critters. So you want to move it from ammonia towards the nitrate to be
So
healthier.
The bacteria on that spiky ball actually eats the ammonia?
No, it's converting it
Okay.
in the presence of oxygen. It's bacteria. We would call them aerobic bacteria because they need oxygen as opposed to anaerobic bacteria. And with those aerobic bacteria, we're able to move it along that progression towards the nitrate.
So we're going to have a couple of days here, really hot weather. Does the air temperature or the wind or other things factor into your data collection?
Yeah. So oxygen is inversely proportionate to temperature. So as our heat goes up, our oxygen decreases, which could affect our biofiltration and not work as efficiently. Thankfully, we're all closed systems. So then we have heating and cooling systems on every system that needs it. And we don't notice too much of a change in our enclosures with the change in outdoor temperature.
So I'm thinking about the penguin exhibit because, we always visit the penguin exhibit when we go to the zoo. And you've got all these lovely penguins that are diving into the water and doing acrobatics and then getting up and then sliding back into the water. But that doesn't seem like it's a chlosed system, is it?
That would be one of our chlorinated systems.
Okay.
So we don't rely on the nitrogen cycle for our penguin exhibit. We rely on a chlorinator to keep the water clean.
Okay, I get it.
And that water's probably, is it chilled? So can the penguins kind of cool off when they get in the water, or is the water just a function of the air temperature around it in the penguin exhibit?
I do not know if we have a chiller on that system.
Okay.
We do dump and fill often, and generally the water we use to fill is a little cooler.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. And going back to our Hellbenders, we talked about them needing high oxygen, and what TJ just said is interesting about how oxygen's inversely correlated with water temperature. So if we need high oxygen, here's a quiz for you, Suzie. Does that mean we would need cold water or warm water where these Hellbenders live?
I'm guessing lukewarm water.
Nope, cold water. You tried to get out of it with a compromise position. But so cold water holds more oxygen. And so since hellbenders need a lot of oxygen, they're going to be found in colder water streams, which is another reason why they can have some difficulty, because there's not a lot of cold water streams. A lot of streams get pretty warm in the summer months.
So we have Tippy River here.
Mm-hmm.
Southern Indiana has Blue River.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Southern Indiana is warmer than Northern Indiana. How come we don't have hellbenders in Tippy River?
Well, it's going to depend on a few factors. So you can have cold water rivers even as you go further south if those rivers are being fed by spring water, because in Indiana, even in southern Indiana, I love going spelunking, and TJ got to do that when he was a student here at Grace. Our groundwater, our ground temperature in Indiana is 54 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you've got water coming out of that 54 degree ground temperature, the water is going to be around 54 degrees. And so if it's what we would call a groundwater fed stream, it's going to be a cold stream. And if it's a surface water fed stream, maybe water's running across the surface of the ground, or water's coming out of a lake, and it's coming off the surface of the lake is kind of what's overflowing into the stream, then that's going to be a much warmer stream during the summer months when the air temperature is so warm. Sometimes you can get a cool water stream even after a lake if the water coming into the stream is coming from a deeper water depth in the lake rather than the surface water, which is going to be warmer.
And a lot of the research that you're doing here at the Lilly Center is collecting data that talks about oxygen levels and temperature. Yes.
Yes, and the relations to nutrients. So that's another another correlation between what they're doing at the zoo and what we're doing here at the Lilly Center and some of our natural environments. You need data to make good decisions, and we're embarking on this new program here at the Lilly Center called Lake RX, where we're developing custom prescriptions for individual lakes and how to fix the problems that our data is showing. And those solutions are evidence-based. We need to know there's evidence there to support a solution before we're going to implement that decision. And then, just like TJ does at the zoo, we're going to continue to monitor the data to see what we're doing, if it's working or not. Just like when they add more bio balls to see better cycling, and then they're going to watch it, is it working, or do we have to add more? In the same way, we'll be tracking wetlands and see, okay, is that reducing nitrogen and phosphorus coming into our lakes? Oh, it's not doing it enough yet. We need to add more wetlands, or we got to change this particular wetland and the design of it to help make those ecosystems even better. So it's all data driven, and so that's really fun that the zoo does that, and we do that here too.
So your students that are coming to the Lilly Center at Grace College are graduating with environmental degrees.
Mm-hmm.
TJ, your degree was in
environmental science.
Okay. And you're now monitoring water. You're helping a really important asset in our state, the Fort Wayne Zoo. What other types of careers do students have with an environmental degree?
Yeah, so we have a number of them. Probably I'd put them in three categories. So we have students who go out into the public sector. That would be in government agency jobs. So maybe United States Department of Agriculture, United States Environmental Protection Agency at the state level, Indiana Department of Natural Resources, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, county level, Parks and Recreation, Health Department, city level, stormwater and helping manage stormwater. And then the next major category would be private. And that would be for-profit companies, maybe working for an attorney office in environmental law. It could be working for an environmental consulting company. It could be working for wildlife control. Yes, it could be working in wastewater. That would probably be more on the government side. Again, it could be in agriculture, research and development, and then you have the nonprofit side, and I think Fort Wayne Zoo is a
Yes.
nonprofit,
Yep.
right? A 501c3, and so we have lots of roles in those as well, and those could be school corporations, being in education as well, and so we can prepare students into all three of those positions. We have three different environmental majors: environmental biology, environmental science, and environmental studies. TJ, as he said, graduated with environmental science. And I think it might be important here to mention for youngsters or parents or grandparents of youngsters that are listening to this and kind of thinking about, hey, my grandson or my son or or myself personally, or daughter or granddaughter has an interest in environmental stuff. Well, what sorts of things might they need to think about if they're thinking about college? Well, one, we've already talked about it, hands-on. So be looking for a college that is hands-on, where you're going to literally get your hands dirty and your feet wet.
Or wet.
Yep.
and you're going to be inspired to continue to move in that direction, and you're learning field skills that will be beneficial to you in your career. You're learning laboratory skills, all of these things hands-on. That's going to be so critical. Certainly there needs to be some foundational concept knowledge and some textbook knowledge, but there even more so needs to be hands-on experience working outside in the field. And that's definitely an important part of our program here at Grace College. The other thing I would say is looking for the right size program. You know, TJ was talking about earlier, he was debating a large public university and a small Christian college, right? And I'd like to think that where we are here with Grace, we've got the best of both worlds. At Grace, our environmental science program is large enough that we have all of these great opportunities with the Lilly Center and research and these things that we've been talking about, but we're small enough that we get to know each one of our students as an individual. And each of those students gets a tailor-made program to get them ready for what their career is going to be. Notice TJ talked about how we got him an internship with the DNR, with a fisheries biologist. And so knowing what his interests were long-term for his career, we made that possible for him, not for all of our students, but for him, because that was an important direction that he wanted to go. And then the last thing I think that we do well, and I would suggest people look for in a college program, would be one that offers internship and research opportunities. Gone are the days where you can just get a great environmental job because you have a degree and you have some classes from a transcript. No, now you need to have a resume already built by the time you graduate from college. And TJ kind of talked through his resume a little bit. It's pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive.
He was able to get a really impressive job right out of college at the Fort Wayne Zoo because that resume was already built. He had internships, several different internships he mentioned. He had research experience, and that helped set him up really well. Even entry-level jobs require several years of work experience. And so that seems, well, how could it be entry level if it requires work experience? Well, that's the reality of environmental positions today. TJ, through his time working here at the Lilly Center, he said he worked here 3.5 years. He already had 3.5 years of work experience, worked here during that time, worked in summers doing internships as well. And so he was able to get a wonderful position. And that's what we provide for our students at Grace.
You know, I think I'm going to add one thing wrapped up in two things. You also are innovative and a collaborator. So the innovation, just the creation of the Lilly Center, but also the Lake Dr. RX, which will be an opportunity for your students to add to their student resume of job experience. And you collaborate. When you look at all of the entities that you're working with, including those public institutions. So kudos to you. And TJ, kudos to you. I think your mom and dad and grandparents just must be overjoyed. One, that you're creatively employed in your degree. Like, oh, yay.
Yeah, right.
As a grandparent, I'm going, oh, yeah. Oh, and you obviously love what you do. So congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so glad that your journey has led you back to being able to share your experience with us at the Lake Doctor podcast. So I would invite our guests to tune in to the next Lake Doctor podcast when the doctor is in.